This is Mama's Mad Ideas, and I'm here today with you with another video. In today's video, I will be showing you how to add the finishing touch to your project. I will be going over 4 detailed stitches, so get ready and let's get started. For this project, you will need, of course, the piece you've been working on. And the piece I will be working on today is the swatch I made from the previous video. And this is just a swatch of the granny square crochet stitch. And so what I'm going to do, this project has 4 sides to it. So I'm going to show you 4 different stitches utilizing this one piece. So I'll have a different stitch on each side. For today's project, you will need a pair of scissors, a crochet hook of your choice, some type of cardboard. Now I took this cardboard from an old box. You're also going to need yarn. So I have a couple of different colors that I will be using from today to demonstrate the different crochet stitches. So let's go ahead and get ready and get into the first stitch. Now the first stitch I'm going to be demonstrating is called the shell stitch. So it may be easiest if you look at the detail first and then try to follow along. But basically it's going to be a combination of all the stitches that you've learned thus far in the crochet videos. It's not hard, it's really easy, and I'm sure you will be able to get this. So let's get ready. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to finish off my project that I was working on in the last video. And I've come to the end of my corner. So I'm just going to pull this stitch right here. And then I have this loose end right here. So what I'm going to do with this loose end, I'm going to flip my project over. And I'm going to weave it in. So I'm just going to take my hook and I'm going to go through some of my yarn in the back of my project. And I'm going to weave this in some. So the first stitch that I'm going to be doing, or pattern, is going to be the shell stitch. This is a very pretty stitch. It's kind of fancy. It looks really pretty on baby blankets. So the first thing I want to do is, if you'll see the corner, this is the corner of our work, of the blanket that we were working on. So this is right here, that chain 2 stitch. So I'm going to stick my hook right inside that corner. I'm going to wrap my yarn over top my hook, and I just want to kind of pull that through. Now I'm going to wrap my yarn around my hook, and I'm going to make a slip stitch and attach my yarn right there to that corner. So I'm just going to pull it a little bit to tighten it up. And then I'm going to chain. Make 1 chain to lock it in. In that same stitch, I'm going to stick my hook through the corner. I'm going to pull up a loop and I'm going to make a single chain. I'm going to zoom that in a little bit so you can see that. Now, this very next stitch right here, I'm going to skip this stitch. And in this middle stitch of my double crochet chain, I'm going to single chain. Okay, so I'm going to, after I single chain, I'm going to skip a stitch. And then in this space right here, I'm going to double chain. So I'm going to make 1 double crochet right here. That's 1. And then I'm going to repeat that 5 more times. So that's 2. That's 3. That's 4. It's 5. And then 6. So I made 6 double crochet chains right there in that chain 1 space. Okay, so this is the first scallop. And if you'll see, that'll be very pretty, very fancy on a blanket. So in my next stitch, I'm going to skip a stitch and then I'm going to single chain right here in the next stitch. So I'm skipping a stitch in between. So I'm going to single chain right here, and it kind of locks that scallop in. Now I'm going to skip a space, and then I'm going to single chain in the next space. So I'm skipping this space, and then I'm going to single chain in the next space. So I'm going to single chain, then I'm going to skip a space, and then I'm going to do 6 double crochet chains in the next space. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right, so now I have my second scallop, and so I'm going to skip a space, and then I'm going to single chain in the next space. And I just lock the second scallop stitch in. And this is very easy. This is basically 2 stitches that you learn. It's the single chain stitch and the double crochet chain stitch. And what we're doing, we're skipping a stitch, single chain, skip a stitch, and then do 6 double crochet chains. Skip a stitch, single chain, skip a stitch, 6 double crochet chain stitches. So I'm going to skip a stitch, and now I'm ready to do 6 double crochet chain stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I'm going to skip a stitch, and then I'm going to single chain in my next space. I'm going to skip a stitch, and then I'm going to do 6 double crochet chain stitches in my next space. Now I'm going to skip a space, and then I'm going to single chain in my next space. Now I'm going to skip a stitch, and I'm going to double crochet chain stitch in my next space. And I'm going to meet you at the end, at the corner. So I'm just to the end of the row, and I'm going to go ahead and finish that off with my 6 double crochet chains. That's 4, 5, and 6. I'm just going to go ahead and slip in that last stitch, and then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut off my loose end. Give me a second. I'm just going to cut this, and then I'm going to pull the loose end through. And so this is the scallop stitch, and this is just a combination of the single chain crochet stitch and the double crochet chain stitch, and it works out fairly easy. And like I said, it looks really pretty as a garnishing for like a ruffle or a pillow or a blanket or something like that. So now let's get into the next stitch. So for the next stitch, we are going to be using our piece of cardboard. And so with this cardboard, all you're going to do is simply wrap some yarn around that cardboard, and you can get the length and the width of cardboard of your choice. And essentially the length of your cardboard will be the length of your fringes. So this is going to be like a fringy border. So all I'm going to do is take my cardboard, I'm going to take my yarn and start it and hold it right here. And all I'm going to do is just wrap. So I'm going to wrap the yarn all the way around that cardboard. And what I'm doing, I'm just making my yarn even. It's just an easy way to make your yarn even. So you're going to wrap a good amount of yarn around that cardboard. And you're just going to keep wrapping until you think you have enough. So I want to do enough to cover one side of this swatch. So I'll probably wrap it for about 50 times. That may be enough. So let's see. Okay, so I'm back. I have my cardboard wrapped a good amount of times. So once you have your cardboard wrapped to the desired amount, you're going to take your scissors and you're going to go along the edge, like right down the side. And all you're going to do is cut. You're going to hold your yarn and you're going to try to cut that across as evenly as you can. And this was just a simple way to make a lot of fringes. So once you do that, now you have all of your loose fringes, and they should be pretty even. So now you're ready to begin adding your fringes to your work. So I'm just going to move this yarn over to the side. You can also be creative and use different colors of fringes, but for this particular project, I'm going to use the same color. So for this, I'm going to use the gray. Okay, so to get started with the fringes, you're going to want to find a corner to get started on. And I think I'm going to start on this corner right here. All you're going to be doing is simply guiding the yarn through the last loops that you created. So for the first stitch, you're going to take your crochet hook and you're going to put it from front to back right in that top stitch right here, underneath both of these two spaces. So then you take one of your fringes that you cut, you're going to lay that on top of your hook. And you're going to want to make sure that they're sort of even at the bottom. All you're doing is guiding that fringe through that loop. Now you're not going to pull it all the way through. You're going to stop right there, and you have the ends of your fringe. You're going to wrap your yarn around your hook, and then you're going to guide those loose ends through that hole, and you're creating a fringe. And then you're going to tighten up on it. And I'm going to turn it this way so you can kind of see it. if you'll see, this is sort of a long fringe, and you may not want yours that long, but then you may want to cut it as you complete your project. You can also take a comb and separate the hairs to make it kind of fuzzy. But I'm going to show you a few of these, how to add the fringes to the end of your work. And a lot of times, so that it's not so full, I will skip a few spaces in between to create the look I want. If you use every space, then you're going to get a really full look. But if you skip some spaces, then you'll probably get a really evened out look. So I'm going to do a couple of more, and I think I'm going to skip like 2 spaces in between. So that's 1, 2. And I'm going to take this next space, and you can kind of gauge it as you finish. You can go back and you can add more fringes as you go. Just depend on the look that you're looking for. So I'm just going to keep pulling up loops and adding my fringes as I go. And it's super easy. You can also tie a knot in the end of this to reinforce this. And I can show you one like that. So once you loop it through, you can easily wrap it around your finger and then just easily tie a knot right here at the base to secure that. And you just pull down on it. So you're tying a knot right at the base. And that way you know that it's not going to come loose. All right, so let's do a few more fringes. So I'm going to skip 2, and then I'm going to add me another fringe. And just remember, you can tie knots in it if you choose to. But for the purpose of the video, I'm just going to show you how to do the slip stitches, and then you can decide whether or not you want to add the knots to it or not. Usually after you wash your garment or your project, it makes the fibers in the yarn bond together, and they generally do not come loose. So that is the reason why you have an option on whether or not you tie a knot at the end or not, because most of the time before you gift a project, generally you'll wash it and size it and everything. And so therefore, usually the ends are bound together and they will not come loose. Just the agitation alone of washing it makes the fibers in the yarn change. Just going to keep on going throughout that border right there and adding your fringes. And I'm going to meet you back in a few minutes with the finished product. Okay, so I just finished adding the fringes to the end of the swatch. And as you can see, the fringes are a little bit long, so I'm just going to snip them. I do like fringes on baby blankets and shawls and different things like that. But I'm going to go ahead and cut these down just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and cut about half off. Now you can get a better idea of what the fringes should look like. Okay, so now let's get into the third crochet stitch. Okay, so the next stitch that I'm going to show you is the loop stitch. And so what we're going to do to get started on that very next stitch, we're going to start by joining our yarn to our work in the corner as we did in the previous videos. So I'm going to pull up a loop. I'm going to make a slip stitch. And then I'm going to single chain in that same corner. Now that I have my work securely attached, I'm going to chain 3. So that's 1, 2, and 3. Once you chain 3, then you're going to skip 1 space, and then you're going to slip stitch in the very next stitch. So I'm going to slip stitch in this very next stitch. And that creates a loop, the loop stitch. So once you slip stitch, you're going to simply chain 3, 1, 2, 3. You're going to skip a space, and then you're going to slip stitch in the very next stitch. So I'm going to slip stitch in this very next stitch. Now remember, we're not single chaining, we're slip stitching because we want our work to go down and have a little dip. So once I slip stitch, I'm going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to skip 1 space, and then we're going to slip stitch in the very next space. And we just pull our yarn through our work. Chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. Skip a space, and then we're going to slip stitch into this very next space. Once we have slip stitch, we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And now we're going to skip 1 space and slip stitch in the very next space. And it creates a really pretty scallop edge. It's not necessarily as large as the first stitch we did, but it's more dainty. It's a really pretty little scallop edge, and it makes a really simple finish to your project. So we're going to complete this step all the way across. Remember, after we slip stitch, we chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. Once you chain 3, you skip 1 space, and then you're going to slip stitch into that very next space. And then chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. Skip 1 space and slip stitch into the very next space. There's my slip stitch, and then I'm going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to complete this all the way across, and I'm going to meet you back in a couple of seconds. Okay, so I just come to the end of my last stitch, and I'm going to just cut the yarn, and then I'm going to pull it through. So this is the scallop stitch. And as you can see, it makes a lot smaller stitch. It's sort of like a ruffle, but it's a lot different than the other scallop stitch. So far we've learned 3 different borders that we can use to complete our work. So we have a scallop stitch. We have the loop stitch. And for the last stitch, I want to show you how to do a really clean finish to the project, but I also want to show you how you can design it also. So we're going to switch colors and we're going to do a simple half double crochet chain stitch across this end, and we're going to variate the colors that we use. Okay, so let's get ready to do that. So for the very last stitch, you're going to choose your color and you're going to go ahead and attach your yarn into the corner of your work. You're going to pull up a loop and secure that with a slip knot. Go ahead and single chain twice. So now that you have single chain twice, in that very same space, you're going to wrap your yarn around your hook, pull up a loop in that same corner, and then you're going to go through all 3 loops on the hook. And you've created a half double crochet chain. So you're going to complete that all the way across in every space. So in the top of every space, you're going to be doing half double crochet chain stitches. I'm going to start over. My yarn got tangled. Now, so in the top of every space, you're going to be doing the half double crochet chain stitches. So you wrap your yarn, you go under, pull up a loop, pull through all 3. Wrap your yarn, you're going to go through a loop, pull up a loop, and go under 3. Wrap your yarn, pull up a loop, and go through all 3. Wrap your yarn, pull up a loop, and go through all 3. You're going to complete this step all the way across, and it's just creating a simple border on your project. It's very easy. You wrap the yarn, pull up a loop, and you're going to go through all 3. You're going to do this all the way across. It's storming here. How's the weather where you are? Y'all hear that thunder? So loud. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this. We're going to go all the way across with these half double crochet chain stitches. And I'm going to meet you back at the end. Okay, so I just made it to the end of my work. And I'm going to end right here with this color because I want to show you how to change to a new color. So I'm going to pull this right here, take my yarn out of my work, and then I'm going to cut my yarn. Now I'm going to pick back up with my white yarn. I'm going to stick my hook back inside of my loop. I'm going to wrap the white yarn around my hook, and I'm going to pull that white yarn through the hook. I'm going to get the working end of my yarn. I'm going to chain 2, 1, 2, pull my threads tight, and then I'm going to turn my work to the wrong side. Once I have turned my work, now I'm going to go back across working in the same loops. So I'm going to wrap my yarn, go through the top, pull up a loop, and go under 3. And I just changed the color. Wrap my yarn, go through the top loop, pull up a loop. Let me do that over. Wrap my yarn, go through a loop, pull up a top loop, and go through all 3. Wrap my yarn, pull up a loop, and go through all 3. Keeps tangling on me. Wrap my yarn, pull up a loop, and go through all 3. wrap my yarn, pull up a loop, and go through all 3. So I'm going to wrap my yarn, pull up a loop, and go through all 3. Wrap my yarn, pull up a loop, and go through all 3. Now I'm going to complete this all the way across the row. And I'm going to meet you back at the end in just a second. Okay, so I just made it to the end of the row. So now I'm going to cut the white yarn. And then I'm going to change my color again. So I'm going to go to the pink yarn this time. So I'm going to take my yarn and wrap it around my hook and pull up a loop. I'm going to chain 2 and lock it in, and then I'm going to turn my work. And this is going to be my last row, but I just wanted to demonstrate to you how you could change the color. So in that very first stitch, I'm going to do a half double crochet chain, wrap my yarn, pull up a loop, and I'm going to half double crochet chain all the way across, just as I had did in the previous 2 rows. And I'm going to meet you back at the end of this row to complete this project. Hey, okay, so we finally finished the half double crochet chain stitch border. And as you can see, it turned out pretty good. And I just wanted to give you an example of how you can change colors. At the bottom right here, we have that crochet loop stitch. It's very simple, very delicate and pretty. Then we have those fringes for making garnishes, make it look kind of funky, you know, that's that funky type look. Then also we have the scallop shell stitch border. So that's 4 different ways you can end your crochet project. I really hope you'll come back and join me for some of my future crochet series. I plan on doing a Crochet After Dark series in the near future, and that should be a lot of fun. We're going to get our hooks, get us some wine, or get us a cocktail, come back and have some conversation and enjoy crocheting together after dark. Also, I will be doing some intermediate and advanced crochet series selections. So please stay tuned for my future videos. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to share my content. Please like, subscribe, and I hope you'll come back and see me real soon. Take care, stay blessed. See you again. Bye-bye.